How to make an event a success. I'm sure many of us have been to an event. That bit is easy, isn't it? If you come away from an event feeling stressed, that you've in effect picked up on the stress of an organiser, then you could say that event has failed. So what about the other side of the fence, putting on an event? We know that's a bit more testing. So I could suggest that the way to define an event's success is if it has credibility in its target audience. If you remember that phrase and all the planning feeds into it, then you've got all the elements to have a successful event. Firstly, we need to consider the target audience. And thinking about that credibility again, if you're having an event in a village, that let's say it was some sort of jam or produce sale, and you put a few posters up on telegraph poles around the village and you tell a few people, that could still have credibility if that has just nailed the people within a few lanes and streets to come to your community event. But you would know, of course, that's a long way away, let's say from an international air show. A few posters on telegraph poles are not going to work. So you've got that credibility across the whole spectrum as to who you're talking to, how your event is presented, how it comes across, how you market it. Those are the elements to consider. When we talk about that target audience, there's a number of ways of segmenting it so that you communicate to those segments and drive your resources the most powerful way. You could be thinking about age. Is it suitable for a particular age group? Is it a family event, for example? Or could it be a special interest event? Let's suppose some nature activity that you might have one or two people from the local community, but others, the vast majority, might be coming from a lot further away. So the way you have to communicate with them is going to be very different depending on who that target audience is. So really consider, have a good discussion about it, how you narrow down and really consider who that target audience is. Timing. As soon as you've agreed on the date of the event, then you need to start promoting it. It's more effective if you're months ahead. If you're at the start of a year, if it's towards the end of the year, just get it publicised so that it becomes in people's diaries. Getting it in place in the diary is a key essential before, of course, other subsequent events turn up. They're late in their marketing, but your customer has already earmarked it. They've discussed it perhaps with their family. It's red ink in their diary and they're coming to your event. So that's another key requirement. Get planning early in the process. Coming back to that credibility, of course, now we've got the date in the bag, is how you start giving the image of it. You might have some graphic design, for example. You might have a logo. You've got the language of your event. Is it light-hearted or is it serious? Like I said, if it's special interest, you might have to have some very particular messages in there that really have to aim to get that credibility straight away. So in addition to the logo, you might have various people in your team. There might be volunteers, of course. So what you do need is a central decision maker who signs off on all parts of design and communications, because you don't need lots of people using their own logo or scribbling things on bits of paper. You've got multiple fonts, multiple types of language that really then start to disseminate, because the worst thing you need is confusion in the eyes of the consumers. One consumer might be speaking to another and they're going, oh, I've seen this event. Is that the same as that event? And that you know that confusion is very easy to take hold. So you really need to make sure that the whole visual image in the marketing of your event follows a style, and that you make sure that very few people at the center of the process sign it off. We're now going to talk about the channels. Of course, we all know about social media. It's free, so therefore we all like it. But that doesn't mean to say you can just charge at it and not really plan it thoroughly. We've agreed, haven't we, on the language, the style, the visual presentation of your event. Make sure that your photography really feeds into it. Concentrate on getting really good photography. If you run the event before, have you got some really nice photography that you can reuse? All these things create the image, and of course your listings across various media. So coming back to that social media, you've got it looking really polished. Now you're going to place it. It could be in Facebook groups, for example. It could be on Twitter. It could be Instagram. That's where you really need those good photos. And of course, like we've discussed, over many months now, you've got the Somerset Western Taunton Events portal, and that is on the website. And that's where you can add your event for free. But in isolation, it's then important to really build up around it. Think about other media, because of course it's spread across various different channels, which also feeds into the credibility. We've discussed you want your event to be credible. So if it's only been discussed by one or two people in one or two isolated parts of the media, you don't really have that huge weight behind it. But suddenly, if people suddenly half see it on social media, then they hear about it on the radio, then they see about it on the press, then they might see a poster, leads them to a website. Suddenly they might have 20 or 25 visual appreciations of your event. As discussed, it all follows that really nice design style. So it's very important. You've got traction now. You're very close to getting your event to work in marketing terms. As I said about control, if you've got somebody going onto the radio, rehearse in advance with them. So let's say your events organizer in charge of the marketing will fire off some questions. If it's not that person going, if they're subbing out to one or two people on the committee, it's good to sound genuine on the radio, but you must also have your facts at your fingertips. So really rehearse about it. We now need to consider the content then that we're going to put in these different communications channels. It's more than just the event date, of course. We don't want to cut out bits of the target market that we discussed earlier, simply because you've not really thought through what things people might need. Is it a family-friendly event, of course? Would children not be permitted? That people need to know that. Are pets allowed, for example? That's an important part of many demographics. Can they bring their pet? Otherwise, they've got a problem. What's the accessibility like? If you've not thought that through, and therefore it's not applicable to loads of people that were in your target audience just now, and now they're not in it. Parking, public transport, what time does it finish? Elements that we really need to include to make sure. So we've got to build the excitement now about your event in the communications process. Get across those benefits. What does it solve for people? You get a whole day out. That is a benefit, isn't it? So get these messages across very cogently in all your communications. You might have been lucky enough to sign up a sponsor for your event, and these can be very exciting possibilities when it comes into marketing collateral, because the sponsor themselves might have customer lists that they can then proudly announce to all their contacts their involvement with your event. So think through who might be a really suitable sponsor, not just in terms of money. I mean, not everybody is falling over with money to give you in these terms of marketing opportunities, but some sponsors might appreciate the benefit in kind. So what you get from them is help with your marketing, because of course you're looking for the footfall, and that is what you need, as I said, to give that credibility and also to convince some of the key stakeholders in what you're trying to do. As well as the sponsor, you could run an early competition. That's going to help raise awareness. That might also get you more free publicity. Or a fun quiz run across social media over several months. If it was a country show, for example, you might be asking about breeds of farm animals or types of farm activities. What is being done in this picture, for example. I mean, it might sound obvious, it's somebody ploughing a field, but that might not be obvious to everybody. So you're going to increase the engagement across these media channels as the months go past. And of course, what we're also trying to do, they've got it in their diaries, but we don't want them to drift off, do we? We need them to really hold firm that commitment to come to your event. I've mentioned before about images, but that also can include video, moving image. Has anything been filmed before? Or is there anything that you can borrow for some partners? If you've got various tradespeople or exhibitors coming to your event, they might have marketing collateral as well, not just images and videos, etc., but they might have some material about how they develop their product. So speak to all your exhibitors as well. There's so many channels that you can really build up your marketing message over many months and really build that excitement and get the commitment from consumers. Food and drink. It's very important to remember when people go out for an event, even if it's a short event, but for a whole day particularly, is they need to know about food and drink. We've got to get that message across. Of course, we know that it's important in tourism and events that there's an element of discovery, but a lot of people do need reassuring, like I said before, mundane things like car parking. But what about things like safety on site. Is there any backup? People might come with certain health concerns. You don't have to address their whole lives, but what you do need to know is just get the message across that you are there. You take the welfare of all your visitors to your event extremely seriously. So if you do have a website, that's another opportunity to really reassure people, maybe do some maps, some timings for the day, really good information laid out so that everybody who comes to your event can still make discoveries, but they know broadly what they're going to get. When it comes to ticket sales, again, we talked earlier about getting the event in the diary many months ahead. And of course, in traditional methods, like we said at the beginning about your community event, selling a few tickets in the post office might work for you. But of course, more and more as life goes on, we're into a digital world where people do a lot on their phones, and selling tickets online is extremely important. It's not something that you should just ignore, because once you've got that ticket sold online, of course, you've probably got the revenue in the bank. That helps your cash flow with all your suppliers that you need to get sorted out. And you've got, obviously, that sale is in the bag. So you can book online. Beyonc platform is a really simple process where people reserve the space, pay with their card, and then the tickets are digitally allocated. So you know that months ahead, you've got really good figures. You've got a really good feeling about how many people are going to be attending your event. It's also worth remembering, as well as the Somerset West and Taunton Events portal, that the two tourist boards, Visit Exmoor and Visit Somerset, can also help as the months go on in extra bits to do with your marketing promotions for your event. So don't be afraid to get onto the website and make contact with Visit Somerset or Visit Exmoor and see extra things that they can do to really turbocharge the consumer interest for your event. So we've covered a lot of ground. Like I said at the beginning, credibility, authenticity, really remembering what your customers want from this, reminding yourself who the target audience is, so therefore you're going to waste less on wasted communications with people that it was never going to apply to anyway. So lots to think about. Good luck, and I'm sure it will be a great success.